So we are here with our 10 most frequently asked questions about writing a book. I've got 3 experts here in the industry with me. The first is our editorial manager, Erica Bennett. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
We've also got our director of acquisitions, Mr. Don Newman. Thanks for being here.
Awesome, glad to be here.
And we've also got our lead editor, Dr. Larry Kiefhofer. How are you doing, Larry?
Great, thanks.
Good. Thanks for joining us, guys. Well, our first question that we want to tackle today, Erica, is for you. I have a book idea, but I don't know where to begin. How do I start?
You know, I hear this question probably on a daily basis, and the first thing I can really say is you've got to punch fear in the face. You've got to knock out your insecurity before you can even begin to dream about putting pen to paper.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. So our second question, Don, is going to be for you. How do I know if my book idea is any good?
Well, there's 2 sides of is the book good. The first side is whatever story you've been given, whatever message that you've been given, and if it's something that God has given you, something that has impacted your life, know that right away it's good. It's good because God's given it to you. It's good because it made a difference in your life. The second type of good that we get asked is it good, will it sell? What they really mean when they say that, will this sell? Is there a market for that? And one of the ways that you can tell if there's a market is, first off, look within your sphere of influence. Look within your own circle. Is this a message that has impacted a family member? You've shared it with your pastor? Because what you have to realize is that market, there are other places that there are people just like those people, even beyond that circle. So within the circle, if you can find people that this message has encouraged them, maybe giving them some insight, then it's good in that way too.
Yeah, Makes sense. I like it. So Larry, our third question is for you. I know I've felt this way and asked this question myself as a writer. A lot of novice writers want to know this. Why do I need to create an outline?
Well, an outline gives you a roadmap. If you don't have a map, then you don't know where you're going. If you don't have a destination in mind, you'll probably never get there. So what I'm doing is creating a roadmap to help me and the reader follow my train of thought and get to a destination I'm trying to take them. Now, the journey's important, so each stop along the way, just like if you're planning a road trip, each stop for a meal or to stay in a hotel or whatever you're doing, is important along the way. So if you don't know where you're going, your reader won't know where you're going, will be confused, and they'll never buy the book.
And I think we've all read some writing that feels a little bit that way, and you can definitely tell when a writer is organized from the very beginning. It shows in the final product. So speaking of being organized and the final product, another question I know writers just like me have asked, do I have to do research to write my book?
I mean, absolutely. You know, that nobody really starts out knowing exactly where they're going to go or what the material is about. So whether you're nonfiction or fiction, you still need to do research. If it's nonfiction, you need to be combing for research if you're going to, quote people from your circle of influence, or if you're going to pull from interviews, or if there's scripture that's going to back up your key points or themes in your book. You kind of want to have that all compiled first, so that way you can just start to plug as you go, and then the writing process isn't so daunting. And the same thing for fiction. If you're writing a historical fiction novel set in the gold rush in California, you need to make sure your dates are on point. You need to make sure the climate is accurate for the time of year in the book setting, and you need to give off that authentic presence of that time period. Otherwise, your readers are going to know you faked it.
Yeah. No cell phones in the wild, wild west, right?
Nope. No iPads either.
Okay, so if I've done my outline, I've done my research, I've got everything together, and now it's time to start writing, it can be kind of confusing sometimes to try to figure out how long a book should be. And I know that varies depending on the type of book that you're trying to write. So how long should my book be? How do I know how many words it should be?
Well, let me back up and piggyback a little bit on the research thing. Remember, the reason people buy your book You buy a book, or you don't sell books, you sell authors. So I want to know what you have to say. Now you use your research to give credibility and foundation to what you're saying. But if you don't know what you want to say, don't write the book.
Yeah.
So what you do is, I tell people, you just need a download. It may be an emotional download, it may be a mental download, it may be the worst download in the world, but a download's a download. So just download everything you think you want to write about, sort of like in a journal way. Just download it. Send yourself emails if you don't like working, on the computer, or dictate on your phone. Download, get your thoughts in a way that they can finally be put, quote, on paper or in a Word file, so that then we can organize them and so forth and so on. Because as you read through your download, there'll be sentences, there'll be phrases, there'll be words that pop out at you, and you go, oh, so that's what the book's about. So,
Makes sense now.
There it is.
but if you don't start somewhere, if you never start, obviously you're not going to finish. And so get the download there. Now, usually what we see with a lot of authors is what they've downloaded is 2 or 3 or 4 books. A lot of times we get people with 100,000 words. You're talking about length, or 200,000 words. Perfect book. Depends on, of course, what it is. But most books are somewhere between 12,000 words. Why 12,000 words? Because you can't put a spine on a book with a title on the spine with any less than 10 to 12,000 words.
Little known fact.
And you want it to be a book, not a saddle stitch pamphlet or something. Number 2, most people, especially men, don't like long books. What's the bottom line here? So now when we go up about 128 pages, or 20 to 25,000 words, up to about 40,000 words, is a very comfortable, if I can't read it in one sitting, I can at least get there. Now think of how many books you've got on your shelf that you started to read and didn't finish.
A lot.
A lot of them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But remember, most of those starts, you read at least 12,000 words. So if you can pack a book in 12,000 words and keep their interest, then it can go to 25,000, it can go to 40,000. You start writing a textbook at 60,000 and 70,000. It's an encyclopedia at 100,000. Nobody cares if you go over that. So give the reader a break.
Not too long. Not too long, for sure. Well, so now if I've done my research, I've written my book that's a very comfortable 45,000 words. It's right there in the window. Erica, how do I know what to title my book?
Title is the first piece of information that a reader is ever going to get about your book. And good or bad, that's the first piece of information they're going to use to judge your book as well. So there's 4 things to keep in mind when you're coming up with your title. First, you want it to be attention grabbing. You want to have it pack a punch, and you want it to draw someone's attention. Second, you want it to be memorable. You want it to be something that someone can quick in a conversation rattle off the title of the book as, kind of that public suggestion to a friend or family member. Third, it needs to be informative. You have to give some kind of idea of what your book is actually about. It can't be this free thought that has no connection or tie to your material. And fourth, you don't want it to be embarrassing or problematic for someone to relay in a public conversation.
That's a really good point, and probably something that most people wouldn't think of, but it's so true. You want to be able to refer a book or recommend it to your friends and family without having to whisper the title. Certainly.
Yeah, you don't want to be like scribbling it on a scratch piece of paper and kind of slipping it like if the teacher's watching.
Make it memorable and appropriate.
Absolutely.
So while I'm in the middle of this writing process, Dawn, it's important for me to keep the book a secret and not tell anyone about it, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You had me nervous for a second.
No. One of the biggest missing things when I talk to somebody about the marketing of their book is the failure to what we call pre-market. And This can be from the pastor that has a pulpit that needs to start talking about the book in a systemized way well in advance to the date that it's released, to the grandmother that's writing a book of poetry or just wanting to share stories. Every person has an audience around them that they need to go ahead and start to produce desire in them before the book is actually ready. And this can be as simple as, I just want you to be praying, I'm working on a book, to actually have the cover art produced well in advance so you can produce set up a Facebook page, a blog page, all of these things, because the thing that you want to hear, and whenever I work with someone and they set this up correctly, this is what they start to say. What do? I have people asking me, can they pre-order it? Or when is it going to be ready? That is a great problem to have.
Absolutely.
And so, many times people are afraid to share because they're like, oh, it's not perfect yet. Sometimes you'll actually get feedback early on that'll help you shape it while you're working on it. So share, and share often.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Absolutely great advice. So one question that we get here pretty often is, what is the difference between an autobiography and a memoir? Larry, I'm sure you could break that down for us.
Well, when a person is writing an autobiography, it's a lot like a testimony book. We ask them, make a chronology, and then the big events in life. A lot of people want to tell every detail of the event. Listen, the reader doesn't know what you know, doesn't know that detail, and many of the times doesn't care. It's TMI,
Yeah.
So let's get down to the core of what is a mountaintop or a valley experience that you've had in which you learned something about yourself, about others, about God.
Yeah.
How did God use that to work in you and through you? So your life, along with the scriptures and the references and the research you do and all, becomes a witness or a testimony where other people can identify with your autobiography, but also learn something about their life and walking out the Christian life. Now, a memoir is a whole different thing. A memoir is, I'm telling you the story of my life and all the events, and memoirs are written by famous persons and infamous persons. But what we want in a memoir is, and I just finished one with a author who PBS picked up his memoir, and Abigail Disney has done a documentary and it's going to be aired in June. So this memoir is, he's a public figure, he's in DC, he's really chaplain to the judiciary, the federal judiciary, very powerful, humble person. So he first of all didn't want to write the memoir, but his ministry and all the people around, you gotta tell your stories, they're fantastic, and what happened to you here? And he was one of the founders of the pro-life movement, and it started off, in all kinds of things, including being threatened with prison and having to appear, before a federal judge for violating laws and so forth and so on. So the story is intriguing. His life is intriguing, and it involves all kinds of public figures and so forth. So what makes it really interesting, besides what's the down and dirty on all of this? What makes a memoir interesting is we took those 3 little asterisks, which tells you we've broken a scene or we've broken the train of thought, and we're jumping to the present. And the author is looking back. It's a memory. It's a memoir. And in italics, he's writing something that was going on in his heart or his mind, or something when he looks back now that he can share with you from the depths of his being that will touch you with God's presence and change your life. That's a memoir.
Gotcha. I like it. Powerful stuff, for sure. So Dawn, this is something I know that you would be able to answer. I'm a busy person. How in the world do I find time to write a book?
You have to schedule it. I mean, really you make time. Whether it's in the morning or it's in the evening or it's at lunchtime during your lunch break, It's just purposely saying, I am going to schedule this 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm going to spend time writing during that time. And here's what happens most of the time when I'm helping somebody, encouraging them to do this. They will look at their calendar and won't think they'll have time, and I'll encourage them, look, just take 10 minutes. Just take 10 minutes and sit down and write about what you're inspired to write about. Mm-hmm. And what happens is many times they'll say, well, you know what, I ended up writing for 30 or 45 minutes. I couldn't stop writing. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's overwhelming to think, oh, I've got to sit and write for 3 hours. Oh, I've got to sit and write for 2 hours. So what I'll do, and maybe this goes back to how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
I'll get them to just commit. Just do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll come back and stop you, or if I was actually there.
Yeah,
and I'll
good.
find out, no, I want to keep writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know why? Because you make time for what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll just start writing, you'll find out you like what you're doing, and it'll lead to more writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen you live it. You've just finished your first book, and it was by doing just that, scheduling time. And we have resources on our blog that talk a lot about that, about the writing routine and process and how to set that up. So now that you've talked me into writing this book, and I'm so excited and I'm ready to get started, how long is it going to take me to write a book?
Well, there again, let's go back to the discipline of writing. It's got to be a step at a time, a little bit every day or every other day or whatever your writing schedule is, and you stay. It's good to be accountable, whether it's a spouse, a family member, an editor. That's a pitch for us. We can keep you accountable as an editor. To stay on your writing schedule, to put deadlines for yourself. Yeah. I'm going to write an hour from 5 to 6 a.m. every morning. I'm most alert then, most focused in the early morning, so I do most of my writing and editing in my early morning slot. So I was going to just jump in with my story. From 1996 to 2006, I wrote over 40 books, and 15 of them were best-selling books internationally. Wow. So what was the secret? Besides having a lot to say, and a lot of topics, the secret was that at 4 o'clock till 10 or 11 o'clock every day, before I was editing a magazine, before I was co-pastoring a church, before I was making calls, before I was doing anything else, I wrote. Mm-hmm. And the minimum times a week was 4. A lot of times it was 7 days a week. Now, I can write from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mm-hmm. I can write 5,000 words. Mm-hmm. That's what I know my productivity is. Now, I had to build up to it.
That's a lot.
But 5,000 words times 8 days, and one of my best-selling books, I wrote in a week. Mm-hmm. It was bought by a major publisher. Mm-hmm. Boom, out the door in a week, called When God Doesn't Heal Now. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is, and this is so critical, if you will discipline yourself, the plans of the diligent will prosper, it says in Proverbs. Mm-hmm. Make a plan, be diligent, and you'll get something out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. Great advice here from our expert panel today. I hope you writers are as encouraged as I am to start your projects. You can definitely check out the resources that we have available for writers at our blog, which is www.zulonpressblog.com. And to find out more about publishing your finished book when you're done with it, visit us at www.christianpublishing.com. Thanks for joining us.